Welcome to the Ignition News. We love to have you here, but remember to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Click that like button, that subscribe button, and leave a comment below. It's going to be a great show. Welcome to the Ignition News. Let's get busy with the truth. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ignition News. It is April 29th, 2026. We are broadcasting live, trying out a couple new things today. I'm trying to get back on the bike, the wagon. I don't know. I'm trying to get back on the something after being out with some terrible, terrible sickness. It was horrible. So I really have to say I think something is going around, and the worst part of it is, we don't live in a world where we have a competent administration that would tell us, "Oh, there's a new pandemic happening, so maybe we don't get the pandemic thing." But I tell you, like it's very serious. I've never been that sick, honestly, and that was including 2 times with the vid and every other case of the flu I've ever had. So wash your hands, stay safe. And I think the worst part of it is just obviously um the I talked about this at length last week, but the American healthcare system is woefully behind. And I just want to also say that I think one of the things for neurodivergent people in particular, I know women also have similar experiences in medical settings, is that I don't know if it's the combination of medicine. I don't know if it's societal things, but I do know that a lot of women I know also report that they just don't get taken seriously anymore when they go to the doctor. And, I had that experience. Thankfully, I had a good advocate who could help me out with that, and I did not at first get the right treatment that I needed, and it was really frustrating. I probably would have been sick another 2 weeks if I had not gotten the right treatment, and no one should have to experience that in this country. No one should have to experience that kind of thing, and we have to get busy with the work. This morning, actually, before the show, we're actually talking about Lenny Kravitz and, this song and this Gap commercial. And it's one of the things that I think is important to remember right now in days when it feels very dark is I have lived through times in this country where I saw people's rights get better, where I saw people's rights get advance. I share this story often, but it bears repeating. I grew up in a small town in North Dakota, and my principal in high school forbade 2 gay couples from going to the prom. And the idea that something like that would happen now would be outrageous, obviously. But not only was it acceptable at the time, Gary Clark, Gary Clark was the principal, um, and, yeah, he forbade someone from going to prom because they were gay. But I saw the rights of, my friends and family in that community grow and expand, and for the cynical people who tell you that it can never get better, what they're actually doing is they're showing their ass. They're showing their ass that they don't wanna try. They're showing their ass that they don't wanna try to make the world a better place, that they're fundamentally lazy, that they would rather be entertained than be engaged, and that unfortunately is much worse than anything that you'll encounter on the other side, because the other side has their agenda, they have their marching orders, and they follow them. We are left to do the good work. So, welcome to the Ignition News. If it's your first time joining the show, first of all, I apologize. Every now and then, I anticipate I'll break out into some horrific cough. Still getting over that. But please do follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Spotify or Apple Podcasts would be preferred. Do like and comment on the show. I do appreciate I have someone over on the podcast who puts a comment every single day in Spotify. I read it every single time. It makes my day. Thank you very much. But let's get into the show, everybody. I've got a couple stories today that I really want to tie together. There are some important things that are kind of being covered intermittently. Today is National Zipper Day. It's National Shrimp Scampi Day. Did you know that? It's National World Wish Day, which is really interesting. It's International Guide Dog Day. It is Stop Food Waste Day. Let's see, birthdays today, we've got Daniel Day-Lewis. I drink your milkshake. I drink your milkshake, Eli. One of the best actors ever. Also, Michelle Pfeiffer. Happy birthday, Michelle Pfeiffer. Let's see, today in history in 1429, Joan of Arc arrives to relieve the siege of Orleans. In 1432, the United States, that can't be possibly correct. I don't know how that is. Those dates are horribly wrong. But anyways, welcome to the Ignition News. We're gonna omit days in history that are clearly wrong and get right onto the show today because we have some important things to talk about. How's everybody doing? We do stream live on Spotify, Substack, TikTok, and Instagram until Instagram shuts us down. But how's everybody doing out there? I just want to say I see a lot of people, a lot of familiar faces on the show. Um, let's get into the show. I've got four topics to cover today. Um, and yeah, I'm excited to do that. So the first one is actually about Kamala Harris and the mirror test. I guess Kamala just doesn't want to go enjoy her retirement. Apparently, Kamala took the stage on Saturday night at the Arkansas Democratic Party dinner, and she did something Democrats almost never do. She told the truth about the Democratic Party. In excerpts of the speech, Harris planned to say that Democrats bought into flawed market assumptions, the idea that if you trust growth at the top, working people will eventually benefit. Now, she also said Democrats never bought into the Reagan era trickle-down economics. That's obviously a little bit more contested if you look at the Biden era, the Clinton era. And Kamala Harris is also signaling a 2028 presidential run. When Al Sharpton asked her point blank, she said, listen, I might. I'm thinking about it. And the crowd erupted. She followed that by reminding everyone, of course, that she spent 4 years, one heartbeat away from the presidency. Of course, after finishing last in the Democratic primary of 2020 and then ascending to the presidential nomination without a primary process, a move which now I believe the Democratic autopsy would actually tell us autopsy. I believe the Democratic autopsy, I keep saying autopsy. The Democratic autopsy would say that a proper, short, adjudicated Democratic primary process prior to the 2024 election probably would have been a little bit better. And I didn't really see that or understand that until I exited the 2024 election season. And I saw just how much that particular narrative was used against the Harris campaign in 2024. I wasn't paying attention to those circles, but now, sort of posthumously, I realized that that actually was a frequent talking point that was used as a specific reason to pull people away from the sort of center around the idea of democracy. Because you have to remember, the core argument for the Democrats in 2024 was an argument of democracy. And here they just kind of put Kamala Harris into that spot. Now, I want to be very transparent. If they had had anything like a short primary, I think it's probably very likely that the millions and hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into the Trump campaign, a good chunk of that would have been used to challenge the legitimacy of whatever or whoever the nominee was. And it's certainly probably true that Harris as a nominee was a much more defensible position because she was the sitting vice president. She was already theoretically on the ticket to replace Biden. But the fact of the matter remains. We have to start thinking beyond the past. And we have a Democratic Party that is really, really stuck in the past and cannot get past the third way, the Clintonian, the Obama era of the Democratic Party, in spite of the fact that it's not adding new voters, in spite of the fact that it's not exciting one, and in spite of the fact that it's just simply leagues away from the Democratic Party base. And listen, one thing I want to be super clear about is I know a lot of women who were very excited by the Harris campaign. And one thing that I don't do is I don't shit on Kamala Harris because I just happen to know a lot of people, a lot of women who were not necessarily particularly active in politics, who got directly active in that campaign and who were very excited. But I also saw them very devastated after obviously she lost. And I don't see any benefit on stepping on those people because I still see those people they will still literally post to this day sort of like remembrances of that campaign. Like they'll post pictures of themselves at a rally or they'll post pictures of themselves there. And I don't think that's worth shitting on because I think we need to find those people and find things that make them exciting again. But I don't think that's Kamala Harris. Next, welcome to the Ignition News, everybody. There it is. It's good to have you back. We do broadcast live on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we stream on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so be sure to find us there. I wanted to talk about what's happening with Kimmel. You probably saw that Kimmel's once again in the spotlight. Apparently, during his show, he made a joke. He said, and I quote, Melania Trump had a glow like, I'm quoting here, an expectant widow, a joke about the age gap between the president and the first lady. Then Melania Trump goes on social media calling this out, saying that Kimmel has to be canceled. And now this has actually manifested itself as an FCC license renewal. So, what happened after that is Brendan Carr from the FCC ordered ABC and its parent company Disney to file for an early broadcast license renewal on all 8 of the TV stations that they own and operate. This is a major thing. And this is the kind of thing that when we take a real fair look at this country and we say this is an operational example of fascism. Okay? What Kimmel said was clearly and obviously a joke. To weaponize that and then to take the mechanics of the federal government and then to go after a billion-dollar company like ABC and Disney is an example of the suppression of thought. And I'm seeing it more and more and more. Obviously, before we started the show today, someone was talking about how the TikTok feed is suppressed, all that sort of thing. And that is a very real thing. We all know that. We all see it with our eyes. But I've also seen people that I know in these spaces having their voices muted, having them suppressed, having their accounts taken away, all those kinds of things. And the core question there really is, do you feel that you can speak out against your government? Do you feel specifically that you can speak out in the interest of your government? And let me ask you the deeper question, which I know you knew I was going to ask anyway, which is, do you think you could speak out against another government, specifically Israel? Do you think that you can fairly, politely speak out about Israel's influence in our modern politics? Not anti-Semitic, but seriously calling the question, why do apps like TikTok, why do platforms like YouTube prevent these conversations? Why are people being forced into increasingly smaller bubbles and being isolated and having their voices censored and suppressed? Have you ever self censored something you wanted to say because your voice might be ultimately totally silenced? That's the question. I think a lot of people say that that's happening to them. I will say that I have felt that pull myself frequently. And it's part of how we all have to work to figure out how do we find movable paths forward to resist when if you move the right way at the wrong time, you will be silent. Now, the legal bar to actually pull a broadcasting license is very high. That would obviously take a couple of years, but that's not really the point of this. The point of this is not about whether ABC and Disney are going to have their license taken. The point is the fear, the next comedian who gets up and they look at a script and they say, "Oh, we better not have this one about Melania. We better not have this little part about Melania. She's going to sue us." Right? And this is, of course, coming from the party who has spent the last 40 years claiming to be the party of free speech. Always. Oh, free speech, cancel culture, all of this bullshit. Oh, you can't say anything. Comedy is back. Remember Elon Musk? Comedy is back. Where's Elon Musk? Well, he's certainly not advocating for Jimmy Kimmel. And this is where so part of the show here is I always want to give you like actionable items. This is an actionable item. You need to be comfortable having yourself put in the position to stand 10 toes down on some things. Okay. Standing 10 toes down, whether you like Jimmy or not, standing 10 toes down and having the courage to say, and I actually don't particularly think Jimmy Kimmel's that great. I don't think he's a legendary comedian by any stretch. I think he's kind of mediocre, to be honest with you. Not that I'm an excellent example of comedian, but you got to sometimes stand 10 toes down. And I'm actually going to talk about that again later and say like, no, what he said was not a threat. What he said was not illegal. He was not encouraging violence. He was not suggesting anything other than making a joke about the fact that the president is considerably older than Melania Trump. And if you honestly think that Melania Trump got into that marriage out of love, I'm sorry, I have a bridge to sell you. And those are things you should be able to talk about. And you might think that I'm wrong, and you might find that kind of comment repugnant. But guess what? The people on the other side get to say a lot more repugnant things. And they aren't suppressed, they aren't canceled, they aren't shut down. In fact, they're elevated, they're platformed, they're celebrated. Let's get on to the next one. Speaking of free speech, I have to tell you, this is absolutely. I am very grateful that I recently had my passport renewed. You may have seen this, but on Tuesday, the State Department confirmed that they are going to put the president's face on the passport. The passport is framed as part of the 250th anniversary of the American independence in July, and they're putting the president's face on the passport. So if you're getting your passport renewed this year for the next 10 years, you're going to have the face of the president. This is a unheard of maneuver. This is something that's really never happened before. I looked and I could never find an example of a modern era president being put out on a passport having their face. Of course, this follows the national parks card. If you got a national parks card, the president's face is also on the national parks card. They're putting the president's face on these huge banners across buildings. This is like very Kim Jong Un. Like, there's no other way to describe it. This is the kind of thing that Kim Jong Un does. This is the kind of thing that Xi does in China. This is the kind of thing, obviously, that Putin does. This is a strong signal of authoritarianism. There's no reason to have the president's face put on the passport or to put on the national parks card. And what's most pernicious about it is they have added clauses to these documents. They've added clauses to these documents where on the national parks card, if you look on the back of it, it says, if you deface this card, the card is no longer valid. And so, in addition to putting his face on the card, what they're doing, and this is that free speech component that we talk about, it should be an expression. Honestly, I'm surprised no one has challenged that legally. You should be able, if you want to draw on your passport card and it's still legible and you can still see your name and you can still see the number and you can still see the admission barcode for your national parks pass, that is absolutely a free expression. It's absolutely an expression of free speech. So if you wanted to draw a little mustache on your passport card or draw a little mustache on your national parks card, that should not invalidate your access to using that, for example, at a national park, especially, by the way, at a national park. And these are the examples. While we're scrambling over ballrooms, while we're scrambling over the Correspondence Center, while the attention is being taken away from us, these are the kind of slow erosions. It's easy to get upset about $1 billion a day in Iran, and we should be very upset about that. But it's the small degradations of your freedoms that you have to be willing to stand up for. And sometimes it takes courageous people to do things like challenge and go to the ACLU or go to a legal or find a lawyer or raise money in your neighborhood and say, I'm actually going to put this sticker on my passport or on my, national parks card. And then they go and they get their card invalidated and they go to a district court and say, this is my First Amendment right. I'm speaking out against this government. I don't think it's right to have the president's picture put on my passport or put on my national parks card. I'm exercising my right to speak out against this. And then you may be right or you may be wrong. But these are the battles that the other side is willing to have that unfortunately people like Kamala Harris are simply not willing to have. What Kamala wants to do is Kamala wants to tell you, if you just wait a couple of years, if you just buckle down and pay your taxes and do all of this shit and then maybe elect me in 2028, I'll get together with the Congress that can't stand me. I'll get together with the Supreme Court that is completely working against us. I'll get together with state governors who detest me, who say horrible things about me, who are actively stripping rights away from women, from gay people, who are actively stripping rights away from Black and brown Americans. Just trust me. If you hang in there and you elect me as president, I will fix all of that. Right? You have to be on the front lines of this. You have to be the person willing to stand up for your own individual rights. But most importantly, as we'll discuss in the last segment, you have to be willing to stand up for the rights of other people. And I want to talk to you about the most serious infringement of the First Amendment. And I want to talk to you about the most serious step towards fascism that's happened yet. And you might not like this. It might not make you happy to defend this person. But now I'm going to close the show out talking about James Comey. James Comey was indicted again. For the first time, the DOJ went after him with statements tied to the Russia investigation. That case was dismissed, and because that case had passed the statute of limitations, the federal government was not able to bring up the charges again. Well, now they're back again, and they're back at Comey for this image that he posted on the beach. He was on a vacation, if you don't know what happened. Comey was on vacation on a beach in North Carolina. He saw someone put these seashells in these specific colors, and it said 8647. Okay, so he posts this on Instagram, And he put the following caption: "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." He later said he didn't realize some people associate those numbers with a call for violence. And now this is what I'm talking about. I am I'm from Las Vegas, okay? Never in my life has the term 86 ever meant a call for violence. Never. Uh, 86 definitely means this guy's drunk ass is too drunk. 86 this guy. Okay? Get him out of the bar. Never in my life have I ever associated that phrase with any kind of form of violence, let alone the fact that the standard of calling for violence is a very high threshold. Okay. Generally, when you're charging someone with calling for violence, you're charging them with specific, actionable, time specific threats. Okay. We're talking about seashells. We're talking about seashells on a beach, a picture of seashells that someone else apparently made. And these are these moments when you need to be able to stand 10 toes down and say, this is not what's happening. What's happening is not the federal government prosecuting someone who made a threat. What's happening is the federal government is full of weak men who are willing to do whatever they have to do for their own short term personal power. And so they bent and twisted the rules of law, and they bent and they twisted themselves morally. And this is why this has never happened before. Because before, people would be willing to say, this is not a case. We're not doing this. And indeed, we know that people resigned instead of moving ahead with some of these charges. And this is one of those moments where if you look at someone like Comey, right? James Comey is arguably partially responsible for Donald Trump becoming president. He released this report about Hillary Clinton, the emails on the computer just days before the election, breaking the FBI's protocol about releasing information within 90 days of an election. He gets out, talks about this computer. Oh, we found Anthony Weiner's computer. There might be something about Hillary Clinton there. 2 days before the election, he says, just kidding. There's nothing on the computer. And then obviously Republicans don't like Comey because he had this whole Russiagate thing. But the thing about being a good citizen, the thing about do you actually believe in your democracy is do you have the moral courage to stand up for people who you don't agree with? Otherwise, you're not you're not a member of this constitutional republic. You don't have courage, you don't have conviction, you don't have balls. You're just a coward, and you're petty and you're small. And if you're not willing to stand up for the rights of the people you disagree with, you're nothing. You're nothing. You're certainly not an American. This country was built on the idea, e pluribus unum, the idea that we are better as one people. And the thing about it, whenever I see people taking these small, petty little political grievances with someone like James Comey, is they don't seem to realize that while you're sitting there cheering on the prosecution of the former director of the FBI, a Boy Scout, by the way, they're robbing you blind. They're taking your health care from you to send money to buy bulldozers for Israel. They're taking books from your children's school to send money to build bombs. Effective bombs, by the way. That's probably the worst part of all of this, is to look now and see that this what $1 trillion a year, now they want $1.5 trillion a year, $1 trillion a year to the military industrial complex, and we're getting our asses handed to us. The Gerald R. Ford tucked tail and ran away. Biggest $13.1 billion battleship. $13.1 billion battleship, the newest battleship, supposedly the best battleship in the theater, the most advanced. It's nuclear powered, the biggest, the best, more expensive than 13 brand new cruise ships, and it had to tuck tail and run away. We're burning through our rockets that apparently we have to fire 3 of these things to go after a $20,000 drone. Instead of spending money creating jobs, infrastructure, fixing your roads. And it's and the part of me that says like, okay, I understand. I'm never going to convince a big chunk of America that we don't need military spending. Could you at least not acknowledge how stupid it has been? The very first time I saw Ukraine, the very first time I saw what was happening in Ukraine, the very first day, I looked at what was happening and said, "Oh my God, war has changed forever." It's not a war about tanks and missiles and battleships now. It's fucking 23-year-olds with little joysticks and drones. How did we not see this as a military? How did our military leaders not say, whoa, we need to pivot and we need to pivot right now? Ukraine did. Ukraine, which was, by the way, financially devastated by the conflict that they're in the middle of this constant onslaught while they were in this devastating war, the likes of which they've never seen before. They built 500 different drone companies. They innovated in that moment because they had to. So they built drone companies. They invested in them. In fact, they even offered some of that technology to us as we started this conflict. But guess what? We didn't even answer the phone. Meanwhile, they're actively planning right now to take away more of your healthcare, to take away more of your infrastructure in order to continue funding this endless war. And apparently, the president has privately told people that they should expect that this blockade is going to continue for a very long time. At first, they said days. They said days. Did they not? February 28th, isn't that when this started? And then they said weeks. Oh, it's days, not weeks. And then they said, oh, it's weeks, not months. Now we're on months. Oh, it's months, not years. Now the president is actively saying, how long did Vietnam take? How long did World War II take? How long did Iraq take? Those are apparently the new benchmarks. The theme of today, my friends, is simple: 10 toes down. We have to start being willing to stand up, to stand 10 toes down, and to say no. Because if no one says no, then the answer is always yes, and we can just keep getting bulldozed and steamrolled over. But there are small, little tiny victories that we have over the course of time. Whether that's getting the pothole in your front yard fixed, or whether that's you running for office, or whether that's you going and supporting your ACLU or legal aid group. And sometimes that doesn't mean money, by the way. Sometimes that means, like in Las Vegas here, there's a new legal aid center going up. Sometimes that means, hey, I don't have $50 to donate, so I'm going to go down and I'm going to help. I'm going to do some administrative work. I'm going to volunteer at the library, or I'm going to volunteer at the legal aid center. I'm going to make copies for people. And guess what you will do along the way? You will meet people, you will learn things, and you will get stronger. And your community will be better for your efforts. So I guess the theme today is 10 and 1. My chair is squeaking. I got to get that fixed. Gotta get some WD-40ers. Listen. No. Okay. All these little things I'm trying to figure out. The theme today is 10 and 1. 10 toes down for one reason. The first reason, your voice, your freedom to use your voice. We started the show talking about it. We end the show talking about it. You have to acknowledge that you are less free today than you were on January 21st, 2025, that you're less free today than you were yesterday, that you're going to factually probably be less free tomorrow. If you don't have the moral courage to acknowledge whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, whether you're MAGA, whether you're a lefty, a communist, a Marxist, if you don't have the intellectual courage to acknowledge that you're a little bit less free today than you were yesterday, then candidly, you're kind of fucked, because it's the little tiny erosion. It's the little tiny things, the little tiny pieces that they take from you. And then one day you look around and it's all gone. And when no one stands up and says, hey, that's not right, that's not violence, that's not true, then they all come for you. And then before you know it, they change the definition of these things. They change the definition. And that is what they're doing to James Comey right now. That is what they are doing to the passport and to the National Parks card. They are actively changing the definition of freedom right in front of you. The idea that the government, you've seen people, the idea that the government would say, if you write on your National Parks card, we're going to take your Parks card away from you. That is offensive to me. It might be right. It might even be legal. But the fact that something is legal does not always mean that it is not offensive, and it does not always mean that it is historically correct. And if you can't acknowledge that the president's face on your passport is a violation of your rights, if you think it's just peachy, if you think it's cute, or you think it's funny because it trolls the lefties, that's honestly like the worst one of all, to be honest with you, because there but for the grace of God go I, there but for the grace of God go you. It is not long until you're sitting in the seat, someone is trolling you, someone is laughing at you, and someone is slowly stealing your rights from you. And again, I'll close with this last piece. Here I am defending Kamala Harris, her right to speech. I'm sure that upsets some people. Here I am defending James Comey, his right to post seashells on Instagram. Here I am defending all kinds of people. Even people, by the way, I saw some people coming in over there saying some pretty terrible things on the live feed. As long as you're not hurting someone, as long as you're not being violent, as long as you're not trying to take something from someone that doesn't belong to you, every time we shut down someone's voice, we take a little bit less and we take a little bit more, we erode a little bit more, we steal a little bit more from what makes this country, this planet, and our species really great. Little tiny voices. 10 and 1. 10 toes down for that one amendment, that First Amendment, that amendment that belongs to you. This is our country. This is the Ignition News. Thanks for the show, everybody. Whew.